Hey everybody, it's Missy.
It's April.
And this is Sheela Na Gig. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Each week, of course, we explore our own Sheela Na Gig. For us, that is a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness, who empowers us, inspires us. Could be somebody you've heard of.
Or somebody you haven't, but should know about.
Right. Just trying to bring these ladies light. And you know what? We're never going to run out of content.
No, we have figured out that this is a bottomless source of great information and surprises.
Sadly. A lot of women never got their due.
Nope. Never got recognized for all kinds of accomplishments.
They get recognized, but they should get recognized a little bit more.
Yeah.
Too, right?
True.
Yeah. So how are you, April? What's going on?
I'm pretty good. What's going on? This summer is coming to an end.
Isn't that sad?
I know.
Sadly. There we go again.
There's that word again.
Yep.
But yeah, kids are back in school.
I know.
And people are talking about Halloween.
I know. Halloween. I know. We were just in San Diego for the last hurrah for Labor Day. It was really lovely. We were at my brother's house, my brother and his partner. It was lovely. It was very nice to just kind of be there chilling.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a good way to spend kind of that last Labor Day. Now, when I was a kid, you went back the day after
Labor Day.
Yeah, Labor Day.
That was when school started.
That's when school started.
Not in where I
Not
live.
anymore, no. In California here, they're back. I think my daughter went back, like the second week of August or something?
Yeah, what's funny for me is my kids are past school age. My daughter just graduated from college, so we don't have anybody going back to school.
No, you don't.
But my son was going to work, and there's a high school just up the street from our house, and he called me from the car to say, Mom, I've got to start leaving 15 minutes earlier. School's back.
School's back. That's right.
It was a rude awakening.
School's back. Exactly. Alice Cooper had a song, School's Out for Summer.
Yeah.
But he needed to write another song about school being back.
Right.
For the fall, right? Oh, I think we're just going to jump right in today. April and I have decided to mix it up a little bit.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, what are we doing today, April?
Today, we are going to talk about things women couldn't do 50 or more years ago.
Believe me, there's a ton of them.
There's a ton of them, and some of our Sheelas show up in some of the efforts to give women more rights and privileges than they had just a short while ago in my lifetime. Some of this I kept going as I'm researching this. I'm thinking, I lived in this era. Wow.
Isn't
that weird?
And you're a little older than me, but same with me. I'd say, oh, wow, I was alive at this time. A lot of these I don't quite remember, but very, very different time. Although we are still struggling to receive the rights we deserve.
Not only that, but in some instances we've gone backwards, as we'll discuss.
We'll discuss that too, which is very disheartening. But,
right.
What do we got first, April?
Well, to go out the gate, I'm happy and relieved to say I was not alive for this, but before 1920, women couldn't vote.
We just celebrated that anniversary.
We did.
Last week, I believe.
Yes. 36 states were actually needed to ratify the 19th Amendment and allow women to vote. And Tennessee was the 36th state, and it looked like the vote was going to go down. It wasn't going to pass. And originally, Representative Harry Byrne, if you'll recall, was voting no. But his mother, Feb Byrne, who was our Sheela for our episode number 31, actually sent her son Harry this letter. And at first it sounded, nebulous enough, talking about neighborhood gossip and what's going on and where little Harry grew up. But in her letter, she said, don't forget to be a good boy. And that meant vote yes. And Harry, upon reading this letter on the day of the vote, decided to change his vote to yes. And that is how on August 18th, Harry listened to his mother, changed his vote from no to yes, and that single vote passed the 19th Amendment in 1920, giving women the right to vote.
Oh, that's amazing.
Now, there is a little caveat that I feel compelled to mention.
Please, yes.
When this 19th Amendment was passed, it excluded African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Latinas, residents of U.S. territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and some felony disenfranchisement laws. So some people that were convicted of felonies couldn't vote. And at some state levels, there were restrictions for people with disabilities or mental challenges. But a good swath of the population did get the vote, and eventually all those other categories. I'm not sure about the felonies. People did get the right to vote.
Well, that is good. That is good. And, you know, it was a slow turnaround, but yeah. And you know, it's a good lesson, and listen to your mother.
Yes, listen to your mother.
Listen to your damn
and
mother.
Be a good boy.
Be a good boy and be a good girl. I like my kids that. Listen to your mother. Your mom knows more than you realize.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I realize that now that I have children, that she really did know a lot more than I gave her credit for.
Right?
I look back and like, oh my gosh, my poor mother.
My sister got a fortune cookie once in a Chinese restaurant that said, always listen to your mother. And of course she was an adolescent, and my mother loved that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Remember our fortune cookies recently?
Oh, yes. We had terrible fortune cookies.
We had some bad fortune cookies. They were very disheartening. Yeah.
But Missy, moving right along, what else could women not do 50 or more years ago?
Okay. So this is very interesting. Women could not easily obtain birth control until 1960.
Wow. That's mind-boggling.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I was born 8 years later.
I was born in 1960.
See?
Yeah.
See, isn't that crazy?
Yep.
And we have one woman who stands out from the rest for making this happen. Her name was Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger's commitment to birth control sprung from personal tragedy. One of 11 children born to a working-class Irish Catholic family in Corny, New York. At the age of 19, Margaret watched her mother die of tuberculosis.
Oh, my goodness.
Just 50 years old, her mother had wasted away from the strain of 11 childbirths and 7 miscarriages.
Oh, my goodness.
So facing her father over her mother's coffin, Margaret lashed out, "You caused this. Mother is dead from having too many children." Which is probably true.
Probably true.
Yeah. So determined to escape her mother's fate, Sanger fled Corning to attend nursing school in the Catskills, eventually finding work in New York City, working primarily with poor immigrant women. And lacking effective contraceptives, many of these women, when faced with unwanted pregnancies, resorted to $5 backyard, back alley abortions, which is really sad. It was after these botched abortions that Sanger was usually called upon to care for these women. After experiencing many women's trauma and suffering, Sanger began to shift her attention from nursing to the need for better contraceptives, which were criminalized at this time. So Sanger began to devote more and more of her time to her mission, and in 1914 she coined the term birth control. And soon began to provide women with information and contraceptives, which was, of course, was forbidden by the Comstock Act. And these laws were primarily aimed at banning the mailing of obscene, lewd, or lascivious materials, including information about contraception and abortion, as well as related devices. What are related devices? Like dildos? Don't mail your dildo. Don't mail a dildo.
Oh, definitely lewd.
No,
Lewd.
lascivious.
Lascivious. Yes.
But I think, like, handing out information about birth control is
lewd.
lascivious. Like, that is just insane to me. Oh my God. So Margaret Sanger, though, believed the only way to change the law was to break it. Gotta love her.
Gotta love it.
She stated in her mission that she wanted to empower women to make their own reproductive choices. And as she framed it, birth control was the fundamental women's rights issue. Enforced motherhood, she wrote in 1914, is the most complete denial of a woman's right to life and liberty. I'll say.
Yes.
Jeez. So in 1914, Sanger launched her own feminist publication. It was called The Woman Rebel. Love it. And she essentially was advocating for birth control. She was charged with violating the Comstock laws and fled to England just temporarily because she was back by 1916. And at that point, she opened the first birth control clinic in Brooklyn. Barely a week later, she was arrested and spent 30 days in jail.
Wow.
And her arrest garnered much media attention and brought her several affluent supporters She appealed her conviction, and although she lost, the court ruled that physicians could now prescribe contraceptives to women for medical reasons. A loophole that allowed Sanger to open a clinic in 1923, staffed by female doctors and social workers, which would later become the Planned Parenthood Federation of America.
Nice.
Isn't that cool?
Wow. Yeah.
But by the 1950s, although she had won many legal victories, Sanger was far from content. After 40 years of fighting to help these women control their fertility, Sanger was extremely frustrated with the limited birth control options available to women. And she was now in her 70s. She was in poor health, but she was not ready to give up. She had been dreaming of what she described as a magic pill for contraceptive use in 1912. So, tired of waiting for science or the industry to turn its attention to this problem, Margaret Sanger set out on a mission, and she sought someone to realize her vision of a contraceptive pill as easy as it was to swallow aspirin. She wanted a pill that could provide women with cheap, safe, effective, and female-controlled contraception. So her search ended in 1951 when she met Gregory Pincus, a medical expert in human reproduction who was willing to take on the project. And soon after, she found a sponsor for the research, the international harvester heiress, Catherine McCormick, and their collaboration would lead to the FDA approval of a drug called Enovid, and it's the first oral contraception. In 1960, with the advent of the pill, Sanger accomplished her lifelong goal of bringing safe and effective birth control to all. And then in 1965, Superior Court case Griswold versus Connecticut, the court ruled that the private use of contraceptives was a constitutional right. And when Sanger passed away a year later, after more than half a century of fighting for the right of women to control their own fertility, she died knowing she had won the battle.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
That is an
That
amazing
happened
story.
before
Yeah, she died.
Yeah.
And boy,
How vindicating.
how vindicating, and we all owe her a debt of gratitude for
Absolutely. Thank you, Margaret Sanger.
that. Yes.
What else you got, April?
Well, there was never any specific law that banned women from getting a divorce. However, each state had their own different rules about divorce, including things like how many times a man could physically abuse his spouse before she was allowed to divorce him. And in some states,
How many times he could abuse her
Yeah.
before she could divorce him?
well, because early divorce laws were based on the idea of fault. So one spouse had to prove the other's misconduct, things like adultery, abandonment, or cruelty. Only proving these things were very difficult. It was much easier for men to prove. Why? Because there were more male attorneys than female attorneys. Men worked and had money, and so they could pursue legal counsel and means, getting private eye. Exactly. Women didn't have those financial resources to nail their husbands the way husbands could nail wives. By the way, if a woman was found guilty of misconduct and the bar for misconduct was pretty low, then she couldn't get a divorce. Also, it was just harder for women to get divorces. At one point, women were not allowed to own property or have their own bank accounts. And so if they divorced their husbands, they often faced financial ruin. And then there was this whole stigma of the divorcee.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was scandalous for a woman up until, I would say, the 70s.
For sure.
To really get a divorce and hold her head up high. And
Even
so...
then, I mean, my parents separated in 1979. I was 10 years old. And they were not, I was not allowed to have friends over because they weren't allowed to come over.
Because
we were the broken family. We were the broken
That's
family
right. I remember that. That's a broken family.
We were the broken family. So people couldn't come over. Their kids weren't allowed to be friends with us. It's just really effed up.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So between the stigma, the lack of financial resources, often also women left their careers and their jobs to take care of children. So they weren't as able to earn a good living or have a career to fall back on when they get a divorce, that it became very difficult for women to get divorces. And there's just that systemic bias that favors men that a lot of women say are still present today.
Yep, it's true. It is true.
Very sad, but true.
It is. It is. Well, what I have next, which I think is rather funny, actually. It's not, but it is.
Yeah.
But women could not wear pants. It was actually considered illegal
Oh, tell me about
back
it.
in the day.
Can I tell you my first real job out of college, 1982,
Yeah.
Mitsui Manufacturers Bank? We were not allowed to wear pants. I had to wear a dress every single day.
Oh my God.
And I was so annoyed at it by some point because 82 already? One day I showed up for work in a mini skirt and black tights and black combat boots, and everybody thought I looked cute. And that really defeated my purpose. I was trying to rebel.
Yeah, you're trying to rebel. You look cute, April.
Oh, that was
I would
horrible.
like to see you in that outfit. That would be really cute.
Well, that was quite a few decades ago.
You still have your combat boots?
My daughter does. I'm sure she'd let me borrow them.
Oh my God.
But tell us about women in
Hilarious.
pants.
That's hilarious. No, I just want to say that I worked at a restaurant called the Red Coat outside of Detroit, and we were all forced. This is like in the 80s, but we were all forced to wear these like mini. It was a one piece. It was a red, white, and blue polyester outfit, and we had to wear
short skirt.
short skirt. We had to wear white go-go boots.
Oh gosh.
Oh, it was so degrading. It was just, oh my God. Yeah, I worked there. I did. But according to Smithsonian Magazine, in the mid 1800s in America, women often wore 15-pound skirts.
Oh my gosh. How do you move?
Modesty.
How do you move?
And, women were overheating. They had impaired breathing.
Yeah.
They would try to do housework or sweep, and they would trip,
Oh my gosh.
break bones, fall downstairs.
I'm laughing, but it's not funny.
No, it's horrible. And their organs were actually crushed from whalebone stays and laced corsets.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
All right, who can we thank for the release of that? Caress Crosby.
Caress Crosby.
That's right. We remember us talking about whalebone stays.
Yes, we do.
And the other thing is women were going back to work at this point, and some of their clothing would get stuck in machinery and injure them or even kill them.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, it was not easy being a woman. It's never been easy being a woman. But there was a woman named Elizabeth Smith Miller and another woman named Amelia Bloomer.
A bloomer.
I'm sure you've heard about her. We have to do a Sheela episode on her.
We
for
do.
sure. Both of them. They were part of the first movement of women who dared to appear in public with wide trousers, and they were accused of contempt of decency in 1851. They were insulted, they were attacked, they were hit with vegetables and snowballs by men as they walked down the street.
For wearing pants.
For wearing pants. And pants were off limits to women for much of recorded history, actually. In the United States, it wasn't until 1923 that the Attorney General declared it was okay for women to wear pants in public. This was primarily because, again, it was post-World War I, and a lot of women had started working in factories where it was important to have that leg coverage. But despite that, women still kind of tended to stay away from pants when they weren't working. And in the 1930s, actresses Marlene Dietrich and Katharine Hepburn began wearing pants on a more regular basis.
Our role model.
Yes.
Yay.
And a little shout out here to Sheela Mercedes de Acosta from episode 38, by the way. To review, she was a poet, playwright, screenwriter, novelist, socialite, costume designer, and a fashion influencer. And she had both a friendship and a romantic relationship with Marlene Dietrich, among others, and supposedly was the first to encourage her to wear pants. So,
thank you, De Acosta.
yeah, exactly. And thanks to Marlene Dietrich and Hepburn, these new women were entering into the social conversation, and some of them were wearing pants. Of course, they were normalizing this idea at this point. But even though pants were becoming more acceptable as casual attire, it still wasn't acceptable for the average woman to wear them as an everyday wardrobe staple. Women were still punished for wearing pants in certain settings. In 1938, school teacher Helen Hullick went to court to testify as a witness in a burglary case. She wore slacks for the occasion, prompting the judge to send her home in order to return on another date wearing a dress. She returned on 2 separate occasions wearing her pants. Oh, you go, Helen. Which eventually led to her 5-day jail sentence.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So ridiculous.
The crime of wearing pants.
Then we had another world war. So we had World War II. And this, of course, was another significant turning point because women were embracing pants as they were entering those male-dominated industries and needed practical coverage for their work. And although women continued to enjoy wearing pants after the war, particularly for sports or leisure, style trends for women remained fixated largely on skirts and dresses until the 1960s and 70s. Finally buoyed by the women's rights movement, pants became firmly established as popular and appropriate clothing for women at home and in public and in many workplaces. However, some interesting facts I will point out. Female senators were banned from wearing trousers on the Senate floor until 1993.
1993. That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In Paris, an old bylaw meant that up until 2013, that's when it was revoked, women had to seek city permission before wearing trousers.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And lastly, this is crazy, some airlines required their female flight attendants to wear skirts. British Airlines until 2016.
2016.
And Virgin Atlantic until 2019.
2019, that's insane.
Insane. This is
Oh
2
my
years ago.
gosh, I could count those on my fingers.
I know.
Wow.
I know.
That's
It
crazy.
is crazy. What else you got, April?
So, women could not join the military until World War II. You know, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes, indeed.
We invented women in non-combat roles, but they were needed to fill all kinds of other related jobs, such as nurses or in organizations like the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. And while they contributed significantly to the war effort, they were not granted full veteran status or the benefits upon their return to civil life. And in a recent novel that was published by novelist Kristen Hanna, she really brought to life women's service during the Vietnam War as nurses in Vietnam. And what she exposed it through her novel very graphically was that these nurses were subjected, although they weren't in combat roles, they were caring for the injured, the dying, and the dead.
Trauma.
Huge trauma.
Ugh.
And when they came back from the war, not only were they not recognized as veterans, but they were not entitled to PTSD counseling or any kind of treatment for the trauma that they exposed. They were denied facing any wartime experiences, non-combat experiences. And although it's true that they weren't on the battlefield, they were terribly, terribly traumatized by all of the death, the dying, the injuries, the decisions, the gut-wrenching decisions that these medics had to make about who to try to keep alive and who to let die.
Oh my God.
And so joining the military has, of course, had a lot of different versions and inroads over time, but it's been very hard for women until they were in combat positions to be treated as an entitled veteran and able to access the benefits that they deserved.
Wow, that's insane. I mean, it was a lot longer ago, but even looking at the Night Witches,
Yep.
of course, that were the most decorated,
successful Russian combat force in the entire battalion during World War II, and yet they couldn't even go to their victory parade.
Yeah, they weren't invited to the victory parade.
Their aircrafts were too inadequate to roll down the street.
Oh my God. Oh my
Gotta
God.
love it.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
What do you have,
Can't make this
Missy?
shit up, can you?
Yeah, what else you
Yes.
got?
Well, women actually were not permitted to keep their maiden name.
Oh, I didn't realize
This
that
one
was
is-
a thing.
Yeah, this is a little near and dear to me because I didn't get married till I was 41. First marriage. People sometimes think it was like a second marriage. I'm like, oh, no. I was like way too immature, arrested development. I didn't get married till I was 41. It was perfect. He was my best friend for many years. I didn't quite realize that I was madly in love with him, but I was. And, we did everything backwards, had our child, and eventually, a few years later, we got married. But I wasn't about to change my name. I had spent my life working my ass off as a touring musician, as a working musician. There was no way I was going to change my name. I had worked too hard to establish my name. And I think even if I hadn't done that, I wasn't going to change. There was no way any man was going to make me want to change my name. And I know it's a little awkward when you have kids or whatever, but you know what? We've dealt with it just fine. It's all good. I like how sometimes people call Mike Gibson, or like.
I'm sure he loves that.
Yeah, he loves it. He does. But anyway, many women today are choosing to keep their maiden name after they get married. But there was a time that this was not permitted. It was met with serious repercussions. So there was a woman named Lucy Stone. She was a suffragette from Massachusetts, and she spurred the start of the movement for women to retain their birth name when in 1855 she married and she refused to use her husband's name. So in doing so, she was denied the right to vote in an 1879 Massachusetts school board election. Yeah. So that concept of a woman taking a man's name goes back to the 15th century when women were legally considered their husbands once they married. They were property.
Their property,
essentially.
yeah.
So the first state to allow a woman to retain her maiden name after marriage was Connecticut, and that was in 1920. This occurred shortly after the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which of course granted women the right to vote, and then Vermont followed shortly after in 1921. However, though allowed, and I'm doing little
Air quotes.
Yeah. Up until the 1970s, if a woman didn't take her husband's last name, it was not simply just frowned upon by society. Employers could actually refuse to issue her payroll,
My gosh.
and she could even be barred from voting.
Wow.
In 1976, Hawaii became the last state to officially lift the mandate that a woman take her husband's last name.
I had no idea.
76.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
That blows my mind.
I know. So today, 20% of married women ages 18 to 49 say they kept their last name, compared with 9% of those 50 and older. Just myself.
Yeah.
I'm in the 9%, I guess.
Well, good for you.
I'm proud of it.
You should
Proud
be.
of it.
You
Yeah.
should be.
What else you got?
Well, until the 1920s, women could smoke in their homes, but it was socially frowned down upon them to smoke in public. In fact, it was rather scandalous. And what changed it is a little...
But men could.
Men could.
Oh.
And what changed it is a little disconcerting to me, too, because a man by the name of Edward Bernays famously orchestrated a campaign for women to publicly smoke cigarettes, and he named the campaign Torches of Freedom in 1929 on Easter Sunday parade in New York City. But this was a campaign, of course, to sell cigarettes, not to necessarily liberate women.
Oh.
But because it was such an effective advertising campaign and a money-making ploy for the cigarette companies, that was how women gained more social acceptance in smoking in public.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of crummy.
It is crummy. And that's when they started smoking in public.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Remember-
Not just in their
Remember
home.
we smoked some Lucky Lights recently?
Oh, yeah, the candy.
Some candy cigarettes.
Yeah.
We did.
We did.
We did.
They,
And
I was surprised they still sell candy cigarettes because, smoking has kind of
they
come
do.
out of
My
favor.
son wanted them for his school dance, I remember. They had like a poker theme. So he wanted to have like his poker chips and his
his
candy cigarettes.
Yeah.
I always thought, honestly, I shouldn't say that. I think smoking does look really cool.
Yeah.
I do. I've never been a smoker.
Uh-huh.
I've dabbled a little bit, never been a smoker, but I do. I still think it looks, I think it looks very sexy when people smoke. I do, I know.
Well, if you ever decide to take it up, you're perfectly fine going out in public.
Thank God, right? Thank God. No. I wouldn't take it up. My mother died of a terrible lung disease. It's probably not a good idea.
No, not really.
Okay, so
What do you have, Missy?
women, we kind of talked about this briefly. We touched on this already, but women couldn't own property if they were married.
Yes.
What's interesting is they could own property if they were not married.
Yes, because marriage made you property yourself for a woman. A woman
Right.
became property.
Right, because
of her
Lizzie
husband.
Magie, I remember, who invented Monopoly, she was one of the first women to, buy her own house. That was a big
That's
deal.
right. That's right. And,
And, yeah.
might I add, she also worked in the dead letter office.
Oh, I knew. Oh my God, we knew it was coming, April. We knew-
I'm sorry, we won't talk about the dead letter office anymore. We're moving on. We're talking about owning property.
Oh, okay. So yes, so I'm just going to say, yes, women could own property, but there were some exceptions. In 1921, in Maine, married women were given the right to own and manage property in their own name during the incapacity of their spouse.
Oh,
So
That's interesting.
Yes.
So you just have to render your spouse incapacitated and you can.
Exactly. There you go.
Uh-huh.
In 1939, the first state, Mississippi, grants women the right to hold property in their own name with their husband's permission.
Oh, well.
They gotta have permission, right? 1835, Arkansas, married women are given the right to own but not control property in their own name.
Oh, that's interesting. You can own it.
You can
but
own
can't
it, but your
control it.
husband still controls it.
Oh, wow.
I told you this before. My mom, and this is in the 70s, her mom died. My mom got some money from her mom, and she bought our cabin, our family cabin, up in northern Michigan, which my brother and I still own. And I didn't know at the time, till much later, but my dad had started his own business. It was failing. She went behind his back, took this money, and bought her own property. And my dad, my dad has a new business that he just assumed that she would be putting that money into his business, and she did not.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the end for the two of them.
I guess
and you can see why my mom was, burning in her bra in the 70s. So until 1948, if you were a married woman, you couldn't own property. Anything you owned, regardless of how you came to own it, legally belonged to your husband. So that was up until 1948. This meant a married woman could own property, enter contracts. This meant a married woman couldn't own property, enter contracts, or sue independently. Single women, again, talk about this.
Yeah.
They were known as femsols. Femsols could own property in their own name. But we were talking about 1948. That's when the Married Women's Property Act was passed in New York State, declaring that a married woman had just as much right to own and control property as a single woman did. It was a groundbreaking legislation, and that it became the model for similar laws in other states in years that followed. However, progress was very slow. While Married Women's Property Acts were finally passed in all states by 1900, society wasn't fully on board until much later. It wasn't until Prohibition era in the 1920s that women of varied socioeconomic backgrounds began to feel empowered to exercise their rights and make more decisions for themselves. Finally, a married woman could decide what she wanted to do with her property while living, as well as to whom she wished to bequeath it to in her death.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah. Second-class citizens.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
Truly.
All right, April.
It makes me want to stay a spinster.
A spinster.
A spinster.
Exactly.
Okay, did you know that up until the late 1800s, when women left the house, they were generally expected to be accompanied by a man? Therefore, they couldn't go shopping without an escort.
Jeez.
Yeah. Before 1870s, women typically did not appear in public unchaperoned, and urban centers were considered male spaces. They were dominated by things like wholesale trade and manufacturing and processing. So when women went down into these downtown areas, which were often congested and considered unsafe, they were expected to run specific errands and go home.
In their skirts and dresses.
In their skirts and dresses to their husband's property.
Exactly.
The emergence of the department store in the late 19th century really changed everything for women.
I'll bet.
Retailers figured out that women were a key demographic, and they began catering to them by creating these safe spaces that included comfortable environments where women could not only shop but gather socially. They had things like nice amenities of restrooms and tea rooms, and so the women could lunch and meet with friends and hang out all day. And it provided a legitimate reason for women to go into the downtown areas and lay claim to the center of the city. According to sociologists Saren Zukin and Jennifer Smith McGuire, these stores legitimized women's ability to do that as an all-day social activity. But what you have to keep in mind, though, is that the only women who could really do that were women who were financially well off.
Of course.
Yeah, to be able to afford to go into those shops and dine and have tea and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But it took the advent of the department store to enable women to not have to leave their house with a male companion.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty shocking.
Well,
And
you
it's
know,
still like that in some countries.
it is, definitely.
You know?
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, women were forced to work unfair and unequal working hours compared to their male counterparts. Which I think is kind of interesting in a way.
Yeah.
Because if women were property and they were, doted upon, why were they forced to work such long hours all the time? Like, why were they not treated at least as equals in terms of that? That's kind of shocking to me.
Well, I guess when you're property, you get
Gotta bring home the
regaled.
bacon. Gotta bring home the bacon.
You get regaled to whatever somebody else decides you should be doing. But tell us more.
Okay. So this was particularly evident during the Industrial Revolution, where women, especially those in lower socioeconomic classes, were employed in factories for long hours, often exceeding 12 hours a day, 60 hours a week, and under dangerous and unhealthy conditions. This was largely due to the fact that employers could pay women significantly less
Of course.
than men for the same work, leading to the exploitation of their labor. Now that makes sense,
That
right?
makes total sense.
Women workers could not leave when they were tired or take breaks, other than their designated times. Those who arrived late found their day docked. 5 minutes tardiness could result in several hours worth of lost pay. Most women factory employees toiled 10 to 12 hours a day, like I said, 6 days a week. Even after the Industrial Revolution, the struggle for fair working conditions, including reasonable hours, continued. Women were often excluded from labor unions, hindering their ability to advocate for their rights. In 1908, as a result of Muller versus Oregon, the Supreme Court upheld an Oregon law limiting women's work days to 10 hours.
Oh my gosh.
That's nice of them. Based on concerns for women's health and the future of the species.
Well,
Of course, we make them work too much, they're not going to be able to have babies for us.
yes.
That right, sadly, the ruling was not made out of course, the basis of equality,
Right.
but more on the basis that such long work hours interfered with the women's maternal duties.
Oh
and
boy.
that of having children. Nevertheless, the case had a profound effect on the U.S. labor laws as other states began to follow suit in the coming decades, and then in 1938 came the Fair Labor Standards Act, which set minimum wages, overtime pay, and maximum working hours for the first time, and contributed to some improvements in working hours for women at last.
At last.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, it's just shocking.
That is terrible.
What else you got, April?
Well, in 1879, the Supreme Court awarded states the legal right to limit the jury pool to solely males.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, women couldn't serve on juries. The first state to decide that women were qualified to serve as jurors was, believe it or not, Utah in 1898. I just think of Utah as not maybe being the most progressive, but Utah, I apologize.
Thank you, Utah.
Yes, thank you. This was followed by California in 1917. By the 1920s, several other states allowed it, but as late as 1927, only 19 states allowed women to serve as jurors.
It's crazy.
I know. Can you believe that? And not until 1957, the federal government passed the Civil Rights Act of 1957, which enabled women to serve on federal juries, even when states were still barring women from their legislative cases or state cases. Late 1960s, all states had finally authorized women as jurors, but Mississippi was a holdout, passing the legislation in 1968. 1968.
That's the year I was born. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. In 1975, the U.S. Supreme Court in Taylor versus Louisiana ruled that excluding women from jury service violates the Sixth Amendment requirement that a jury be drawn from a fair cross-section of the community. And in 1994, the Supreme Court built on a previous decision, JEB versus Alabama, which ruled that gender-based preemptory strikes, and that's where a lawyer can dismiss a potential juror without giving a reason, violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So a woman, therefore, could not get kicked off a jury solely for being a woman. Nice try, Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep. That's the history of, in a nutshell, about women serving on juries.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What's next for you?
Okay, this is a good one. Women were not permitted to compete in a wide variety of Olympic sports. The first modern Olympic Games were held in 1896 in Athens, Greece. However, only men were permitted to compete at that time. It was considered by the Olympic organization that the inclusion of women would be impractical, uninteresting,
Uninteresting.
unesthetic,
Unesthetic.
and incorrect.
Incorrect. I'm sorry, I keep repeating your words, but it's just...
It's hilarious.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, uninteresting.
Uninteresting.
Yeah, totally uninteresting.
And incorrect.
Women weren't allowed to participate at all in Olympic sports until 1900. And at those games held in Paris, women were only allowed to compete in 5 sports: tennis, sailing, croquet, equestrianism, and golf.
Oh my goodness.
22 women competed among a total of 997 athletes at that time,
Wow.
accounting for less than 2.2% of the athletes.
Mm.
In 1904, the women's archery event that was added, marking a significant step in including women in Olympic competitions. In 1904, the women's archery event was added, making a significant step in including women in Olympic contributions. By the time of the London Olympics, which was in 1908, there were 37 female athletes who competed in archery, tennis, and figure skating. This represented a growing but still limited participation of women in the games. Moving forward to Stockholm in 1912, the number of women participating increased to 47, and new sports such as swimming and diving were introduced. Other key milestones include women's aquatics in 1908, athletics and gymnastics in 1928, and boxing in 2012, making it the first year women competed in the Summer Olympic sports. Yeah. So several new sports, including skateboarding, surfing, sport climbing, and karate, were introduced at the 2020 Tokyo Games. And so at the Tokyo Olympics in 2020, female participation reached 47.9. That was very exciting.
Yeah.
So the most recent Summer Olympic Sports Games in Paris in 2024 made history by achieving 50% of female participation, meaning half of the athletes were
Great.
women.
Yay. Which
Yeah.
kind of matches the general population.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Wasn't that exciting?
That was.
Wasn't it? Yeah, but you know, before that it was just boring to watch women, you know.
Wow.
Just like women
So
shouldn't be paid
uninteresting.
equally for sports, you know.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see them compete,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh boy.
Go ahead, April.
Well, going back to the theme of married women, and when you look back at this, it's amazing more women didn't choose to not marry. Until the 1920s, single women were able to have their own passports, but married women were issued joint passports with their husbands. And that was because at the time, society frowned down on the idea of women traveling without her spouse. But the broader idea was that married women's legal identity was tied to their husbands. So passports stated women as wife of, and then the husband's name. So you wouldn't be Missy Gibson. You would be wife of Michael Flanagan,
Oh,
right? You didn't even have a name. You didn't have an identity.
no, thank you.
A married woman was legally considered a dependent and required her husband's permission or approval to travel internationally. So activist Doris E. Fleischman fought for the recognition under her maiden name on passports and the maiden names of other women, beginning in the 1920s. In 1925, the League helped Fleischman become the first married woman to receive a U.S. passport in her own name rather than as an appendage of her husband.
Ugh.
The policy, yeah. The policy was finally changed in 1937 when a State Department memo quietly eliminated the practice, citing that the policy was difficult to defend. Imagine that. Even after women could obtain their own passports, some jurisdictions still required a husband's permission for a married woman's application. In the U.S., until 1974, a married woman could be denied a passport without her husband's approval.
Till 74?
Till 1974. That's some scary stuff.
That's cuckoo.
Yeah.
That is just cuckoo. Really scary.
Yep, totally.
Really, like, ridiculous. Insane.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been a very interesting episode.
It has been really enlightening.
Enlightening, fascinating. And I'm glad we're going in the right direction. We still have a lot more work to do.
We do. And
We can't, we have to stay vigilant.
yes, we do.
We can't let these things slip.
No.
No. So, but thank you for listening, everybody. We really appreciate it. And until next time, take care. Keep listening. Send us your Sheelas.
And let us know anything else that you can identify of things
Yeah, let
women
us
couldn't
know.
do
We
more
wanna
than
hear
50
more.
years ago.
Yeah, please. And let us know if you like this episode. It's kind of like a diversion for
Yeah,
us, but
it's
just wanted
different.
to mix it up a little. We'll be back with a Sheela next week, of course. But thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great night
Have a great
or
evening.
day. Bye.
Bye.
Unabashed in your